Everybody got it? Okay. So the people up here, we're going to ask you questions instead of you asking them questions. You got that? You got it? All right. So we're going to start down here with Mr. Alves. He's going to have our very first question. We'll get a microphone to you. Hopefully you folks got your brains working and are ready to answer some questions. Mr. Alves.
Thank you, and I just want to say that it's a pleasure to be here. Though I'm not a New Haven resident and not a New Haven representative, the proximity of East Haven to the New Haven area, I think, means a lot to me, and I've spent a lot of time in New Haven, and I truly do care about the city, and I would like to do as much as that I can do to help out as well. And my question is, what challenges do you face in educating young folks about their job opportunities and their responsibilities as young people in the community? I think that would help all of us know better what we can do to remedy those situations. So what challenges do you face?
Opportunity to be heard. Don't pass this up. Please don't pass this up.
Test me. My name is Frank Douglas. Newly elected alderman for Ward 2. I have a question. Well, actually, it's a concern. I was able to meet a young man who has a problem with his record, his criminal record. And he went to Stop and Shop in New Haven to apply for a job. And he was boldly told that because of his past history, he would not ever be employed. This seems to bother me. What can we do about this?
Pretty broad, but I think people know that at least the city of New Haven has endeavored to do something about that in terms of employment with the city. The state also, I think it was last year actually, passed a law having to do with some aspects of employment with the state. But the reality is that young people who have records still have a lot of problems. There are many employers who may actually fall under one of the categories, either the city or the state. They don't actually know that that's the case. And it's tough. So if you're asking us what we can do, we can continue to, I think the people that are sitting up here at least, advocate that the state move towards passing laws that take away some of the problems that people have because they have a record. But the reality is you have a record and it's going to be difficult, and we have to face that. And we have to, the young people that we work with who may be getting in trouble but don't have a record, we have to do everything we can to keep them from getting a record. I also think that this is not directly an answer to your question, but one of the questions that was posed to us was about employment. I think we have to change the conversations we have about employment as a whole. I was just talking to Representative Alves and telling him about the neighborhood I live in. Many of the young people who live in that neighborhood don't have transportation to go to a job unless they take public transportation. So you ask the question in Newhallville, where I live, where are jobs? Well, they're not in Newhall, so you have to go somewhere else. And if you have to go somewhere else, where are you going to go? Maybe you'll go to the mall, or maybe you'll go to Hampton, not very likely, or maybe you'll go to downtown New Haven, where many of our young people that look like me aren't employed. So maybe you're going to the mall. If you're going to take public transportation, it's going to take you an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to the mall. You're not doing it. And so when we start talking about these things, we have to have people who are involved in these conversations, who actually understand what it is we're talking about. Because we're not just talking about young people who don't want to work. We're talking about some serious obstacles. And if we're talking about that, we're talking about completely changing the way that we look at transportation policy and some of the things that don't come into these conversations. So, Frank, you just got elected. I think you have a different perspective than some other people. I think that's a good thing. One of the things we have to do as advocates for children, not just for our programs, is be serious advocates for children and bring into the conversation voices that will get those types of conversations going.
Thank you.
I have a thought. One of the things that, as you look at really big companies like the Stop and Shop, like the GEs, all of the big companies that we have in the state, they're big employers and everybody wants to work there, but the reality is the main employers of our state are small businesses. Oftentimes, someone who has a record has a better chance with a small business than they do with some of the bigger businesses. And so one of the things that I think that we have to do as a state is to cultivate our smaller businesses, help them understand that we recognize that that's where the jobs of the future are. And I think that you have an easier time with that group of small employers. They're more likely to take into consideration your individual talents now as opposed to your past. The other thing, though, that we've got to do is that our young people, from the time they're in our hands, need to understand that some mistakes that you make are held against you for the rest of your life. It's not fair, but it's what happens. And at least if they know that before they make the mistake, they'll make it in an informed way. So those two things. The third thing is that while small businesses are prevalent in our state, one of the things about people who live in urban areas, because we've had access to other kinds of jobs, is that we're really not entrepreneurial. And one of the things that people who have had records but have skills ought to do, we've got to find ways to help them build ways to serve our community and build businesses. I think that's another, if they have their own business, then of course they won't not hire themselves. I know that's just a joke. But the reality is that we need to concentrate on small businesses. We need to let our children know from day one there's some things that travel with you for the rest of your life. And we need to help them become entrepreneurial if they've made mistakes and can't find work and help elsewhere.
Thanks for asking that question, Frank, and congratulations. I guess one thing I'm thinking of, I was thinking along the same lines as Senator Harp. I've been a reference for many, mostly young men, and sometimes it didn't work out. And something that I learned from that is that the record is one thing, job ready is another. And interview ready doesn't mean job ready. And it would be very helpful. Some convictions are different from others. Someone who had a history of addiction, for example, you might very well, and this is what happened with me, one of the small business people that I spoke to on behalf of a constituent had a brother who had a history and was very interested in trying to help. And we really worked a lot on that. Unfortunately, the young man that I convinced her to hire let us down. And depending on whether you're running a restaurant or a furniture store or whatever, if you need 5 people for the shift and one of them doesn't show up, it's a really big deal, and it hurts you when you go back and try to get other people. So I may not know this, but it would be really helpful if there was some kind of assistance out there for some of the small businesses who want to get involved in this, so that you have somebody to go back to. Because what you're worried about is turning over the tables in your restaurant. But you want to do the right thing. You want to be able to give somebody a chance. But you don't want to have them kind of end up in somebody's troubles if they can't follow through. So I would like to see that happen, just because some of the successes were just wonderful. And I'd like to share them, but I can't because they're real people. But some of the ones that didn't work out taught me something, and that is that we need to provide the supports and a third person or an agency to go to for the small business owner who does hire someone.
I just want to say one quick thing, and it's not directly talking about the child that has the record, but it's about our youth employment program in the state. One of the things that we're going to look at this year, the problem with our youth employment program, well, one problem that I know is the fact that we don't ever release the funds until June, usually. because of the way we do our budget. So one of the things that we're looking at is creating maybe a duplication of funding for 1 year so that we have a pot of money for the youth employment so that we can start up the process and the programming earlier, and we can engage other small businesses in getting on board to hire some of the kids that we're going to do. So that's one of the things that we're looking at for the up-and-coming session on jobs.
Are any other questions from the panel?
I'd like to know about, first of all, I understand that New Haven has a family advocate. Could somebody identify themselves as who does family advocacy in New Haven? We don't have anybody that does family advocacy? Ah, okay. I'd like to know, how do you work with the communities here in New Haven for family advocacy when we do things, when families are in crisis, such as runaways or children that seem to be sent out of school or expelled or suspended or get in trouble? How do you work with the communities, and how do we connect with you so that we can make sure that what's going on is what we need to have happen in New Haven?